The teller turned the monitor toward me. The screen glowed cold and blue. Balance, 0.00. My chest tightened like someone had pressed a stone against it. I gripped the counter so I wouldn't collapse. Before I could breathe, my phone buzzed. My daughter's voice, sharp and cruel. "Dad, your 401k is mine. You're too old to enjoy it." Her laugh was loud enough that people in the bank turned to stare. The folder in the teller's hands felt heavy, like it carried my entire future. He whispered, "If this isn't fixed, your retirement plan closes in 10 days. His words landed like a hammer. 10 days. I left the bank clutching that folder. My palms were sweaty, the paper edges cutting my skin. On the steps outside, a cold wind slapped my face. My daughter's laughter still rang in my ear, mocking me. The signatures on the withdrawal slips looked shaky, rushed. One bent wrong, almost backward. I knew it wasn't mine. Still, the bank would believe the paper unless I proved otherwise. How could I prove it in time? At home, I spread the slips across the kitchen table. The smell of old coffee lingered from the pot I had forgotten to clean. My hands trembled. My daughter's handwriting sat there like an open wound. I remembered her at 6, coloring on this same table. She had held the crayon too tight, the lines always breaking. Now she had broken me with the same stubborn hand. Why did she turn like this? The deadline haunted me. Friday, 4 p.m. That was when the bank closed the file forever. I had 4 days to prove I hadn't touched my own money. My clock ticked louder than usual, mocking me. Prove it wasn't you. That was what she had said at dinner, her eyes cold, daring me. Forks scraped on plates, and no one spoke for me. My own family looked away, like strangers at a bus stop. My decision pressed harder. Should I confront her again, risk another humiliation, or should I run to the lawyer now before it was too late? My stomach twisted with every option. Neither promised safety. I picked up the slips again. The ink smelled faintly of alcohol, too fresh. A detail she hadn't thought about. But would that be enough to save me? Would anyone believe an old man's nose? The night grew darker outside. The fridge hummed in the corner, loud and lonely. I poured a glass of water, but the glass slipped and cracked on the sink. A piece cut my thumb. A sharp sting. Blood dripped on the signature. My blood, her signature. Father and daughter tied by betrayal. I pressed a napkin to the wound, the paper turning red. For a moment, I thought of tearing the slips apart. I couldn't. Destroying them meant destroying my only proof. I wrapped the folder carefully, placed it back on the chair, and sat in silence. My daughter's laugh replayed in my head like a broken record. I opened my phone messages. No apology, no explanation, just a single transfer receipt she had sent earlier. It showed her account. Bold numbers staring at me. She wasn't hiding. She was proud. Fear clawed at me, but then a strange thought crept in. If she was careless enough to send proof, maybe she had left other trails. Maybe she thought I was too weak to fight. That gave me a spark. But sparks fade fast. What if the bank refused me anyway? What if they said, "You signed it, sir"? My voice was shaking even in my imagination. I had lived too long to sound that small. I thought of calling her right then, demanding an answer. But the phone felt heavy in my hand, as if it knew better. If I called, she would twist the knife deeper. I set it down, trembling. Instead, I stared at the clock again. Friday, 4 p.m., a deadline carved into stone. Every tick was another dollar gone, another piece of dignity stripped. Could I make it to the bank with proof in time? In the drawer, I found an old checkbook, my handwriting from years ago, neat and curved. I laid it beside the forged slip. The difference was clear, but would they accept my word or hers? The silence broke with a sound I didn't expect. 3 knocks at the door, firm, measured, too late in the evening for a neighbor. My chest pounded. Who could it be at this hour? I rose slowly, folder still in my hand, blood-stained napkin crumpled inside it. The air smelled faintly of smoke, as if someone outside had been standing too long in the cold, waiting for me. I reached for the doorknob, my hand shaking. The wood creaked under my feet. My ears rang with the thought, was it her coming to finish what she started, or someone worse? I paused, holding my breath. My heart thudded in my chest, louder than the knocks had been. Whoever stood on the other side wasn't leaving. They wanted me to open that door. I leaned closer, pressing my ear against the wood. A voice broke the silence, low and certain. "Mr. Harris, we need to talk about your account." And then another knock, sharper, demanding. I opened the door, my throat dry, expecting police or worse. But it was the bank manager, Mr. Collins, his coat damp with night air. He held a thin folder under his arm, his glasses fogged. The smell of rain clung to him as he stepped in. He didn't sit, just hovered near the chair, tapping the folder against his palm. His eyes didn't meet mine. That scared me more than anything. "Mr. Harris," he said softly, "we can't ignore this. If nothing changes, your retirement plan is terminated in 10 days. His words were the same as earlier, but this time they carried finality. He laid the folder on my table. The folder thudded against the wood. Inside, copies of withdrawal slips, all with my name. But one page stood out, a notice from the bank's fraud division. The paper smelled faintly of toner, still warm, as if freshly printed. My stomach dropped. Collins cleared his throat. "You have until next Friday. If you don't provide evidence, the account is closed, permanently." I gripped the table's edge. My knuckles ached white. 10 days. That number swirled around me like a storm. I asked him, "And if I fail?" His eyes finally met mine. They were tired. "Then the balance remains at 0, he said, "and you may face penalties if fraud is traced back to you." The word stung, like he already suspected me, as if I were guilty by default. The sound of the fridge humming filled the silence between us. I thought of Emily, my daughter, sitting at her own dinner table, probably smiling, knowing she had cornered me. Rage flickered, then died. I wanted to slam my fist on the table, shout, accuse, but my body betrayed me, trembling. I lowered my voice. "It wasn't me. You know that." Collins shifted uncomfortably, like he wished he did. "Bring me proof," he said, adjusting his glasses. "Until then, the signatures are valid." He pushed the folder toward me. My own name glared back, twisted into her slanted letters. My eyes burned. I closed the folder, but the sharp paper edge scraped my palm. A thin line of blood rose. Again, blood and her forgery bound together. A sick joke. I wiped it with my sleeve, hiding it. Collins glanced at the clock on my wall, the one that ticked too loud at night. He sighed. "I'll check in again on Wednesday. After that, I can't help you." His words slammed another deadline onto me. I wanted to beg him to stay, to believe me, but begging wouldn't save my money or my dignity. So I nodded. He left without shaking my hand. The door closed softly, but the echo stayed. The house smelled of damp paper and rain after he left. I sank into the chair. My blood still smeared on the folder, drying into the grain. My hand shook so hard I could barely hold a glass. 10 days. Then Wednesday. Deadlines stacking like bricks, pressing me down. I thought of the slips again. Her handwriting uneven, arrogant. Why did she believe I wouldn't fight? Did she think age had erased me? The answer hit cruelly. Yes. She counted on my silence, my weakness. My own daughter believed I wouldn't rise against her theft. That betrayal cut deeper than the empty account ever could. I rose, pacing the kitchen. The linoleum creaked under my weight. My mind raced between options. Handwriting expert, lawyer, police. Each path had thorns. Each meant dragging her name into light. Was I ready? I stopped near the window. Outside, rain tapped the glass like fingers. The street light flickered, casting long shadows across my table. The folder sat there, waiting, as if daring me to decide. I reached for the phone. My finger hovered over the lawyer's number, but doubt crashed in. If Emily found out, she would retaliate. I saw her smirk again, daring me. My hand froze. I set the phone down. The silence roared in my ears. Another decision postponed. I hated myself for it. My chest ached. Still, fear won. Fear of losing her forever, even though she'd already thrown me away. I sat back down, opening the folder once more. The ink blurred as my eyes watered. One signature curved almost perfectly. Almost. But near the end, the line slanted wrong, a tiny slip. Could that slip save me? Could one crooked letter separate truth from forgery? My hope rose for a second, then fell. Banks needed more than hope. They needed expert stamps, deadlines met. A sound jolted me. The radiator hissed violently as if boiling. Steam rattled the pipes. I flinched, heart racing, thinking it was another knock. My body stayed tense, ready for the next intrusion. I pressed the folder shut, forcing myself to breathe. I had until Wednesday to act, 10 days in total. But one mistake, one hesitation, and she would win. The clock ticked again, louder, closer, and then I noticed something odd on the last page of the folder, a signature so sloppy, so unlike mine, it almost mocked me. I leaned closer. My blood ran cold. That one didn't just look wrong. It looked like someone wanted me to notice it. That night, I carried the folder with me, tight, under my arm. The signatures weighed more than stone. I walked to my daughter's house, the chill air slicing through my jacket. My heart pounded louder with every step. When I entered, the smell of roast chicken filled the air. The clink of silverware rang steady, cheerful, but the warmth of the room froze the moment I set the folder down. Emily lifted her eyes, calm and sharp. "Prove it wasn't you," she said, before I even spoke. Her voice sliced through the chatter. My fork slipped from my hand, clattering against the plate. Everyone went still. Even the old clock on the wall seemed to pause. I looked around the table. My grandson pushed peas around his plate. My son-in-law cleared his throat, but said nothing. Not one person defended me. Shame crawled across my skin, hot, prickling. Emily leaned back, crossing her arms. Her ring tapped the table, a soft but cruel rhythm. She knew what she had done, and she wanted me to choke on the silence. I whispered, "That signature isn't mine." My voice cracked. She smiled. "And yet the bank thinks it is. Maybe your memory isn't as strong as you believe, Dad." My hand shook under the table. The smell of gravy and garlic suddenly made me sick. I wanted to stand, to shout. Instead, I stayed frozen, my chest burning. Anger swelled, then drained into helplessness. Was this the daughter I raised? I tried again. "I still have until Friday to show proof." I meant it as a warning, but it sounded like begging. Emily's eyes narrowed. "Friday, 4 p.m., she repeated, like she owned the clock itself. Her words carved into me. A deadline wasn't just a date, it was a trap she set. If I failed, everything I worked for was gone. And still, she smirked, as if the victory was already hers. I stared at her plate. She hadn't eaten much, just sliced the meat, slowly, deliberately, leaving the edges neat. That was always her way, methodical, precise. Except the forged signature. Why was it sloppy? Why leave it messy? That thought sparked inside me. Could she have grown careless? Or was she daring me, playing a cruel game to watch me stumble? My stomach knotted. Fear mixed with a strange flicker of hope. I reached for my water glass, but my hand trembled. It tipped. The water spilled across the table, seeping into the folder's corner. The ink blurred. Gasps filled the room. My only proof, soaking. Emily's smile widened. "Careful, Dad. You're not steady anymore." Her words burned. My chest ached. Everyone else kept eating, pretending not to hear. Forks scraped plates, loud, cold, cutting me deeper. I grabbed the folder, blotting it with a napkin. The paper felt soggy, fragile. I saved most of it, but one page now carried a permanent stain. It looked like evidence destroyed, as if I'd done it myself. The silence grew unbearable. My grandson asked softly, "Grandpa, are you okay?" His voice broke me. I wanted to answer, but Emily shot him a look that silenced him instantly. She held the whole table hostage. I lowered my eyes. A father stripped of respect, humiliated in his own family. I swallowed hard, forcing myself not to cry. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction, not tonight. Inside, my rage whispered, "Fight back!" But my fear shouted louder, "Wait, not here, not in front of them." My decision slipped again, postponed like a stone rolling downhill. I hated myself for hesitating. The smell of burnt bread filled the air as the toaster clicked in the kitchen. It was a small, stupid detail, but it reminded me of mornings long ago when she laughed freely. Where had that daughter gone? Emily leaned closer. Her perfume, sweet, heavy, made me dizzy. She whispered, "Friday, Dad, don't forget. 4 o'clock sharp." Her ring tapped once more against the wood. Each tap felt like a nail in my coffin. I nodded slowly, but inside I swore. I would not surrender everything to her smirk. She thought me weak, finished, but I still had fight left. Somewhere deep, buried under fear, a spark remained. I excused myself from the table. My legs shook as I stood. No one stopped me. Not one hand reached out. Even my grandson kept his eyes down, peas still untouched. I was already invisible. At the door, I turned back. Emily raised her glass in a mock toast, lips curling. "Safe walk home, Dad." Her voice echoed, cruel and careless. My hand clenched the folder tight against my chest. The night air slapped me again. I walked faster, the folder pressed close, my heart racing. I couldn't breathe. Her words followed me. Friday, 4 p.m. They looped like chains around my mind. And then, as I reached my porch, the wind lifted one page from the folder. It fluttered into the dark yard, landing face up. I bent down and froze. The signature staring at me wasn't just wrong. It was someone else's name altogether. The page glowed pale under the porch light. My knees cracked as I bent to pick it up. The signature twisted strangely, slanted left, rushed. And the last name didn't even match mine. It was hers. My fingers trembled as I lifted the paper. The ink shimmered faintly like it hadn't dried long ago. My breath caught. She hadn't even bothered to disguise herself fully. Why leave such a trail? Inside, I spread the slips across the kitchen table once more. The wooden surface smelled faintly of lemon polish, the same I had used for years. Each slip stared back at me like an accusation. My signature always curved right, smooth and steady. Hers leaned left, harsh and impatient. And now this, her own name scrawled beside mine as if mocking me. I rubbed my eyes, unable to look longer. The clock on the wall ticked, each second pressing into my skull, time slipping away. I thought of Friday again, 4 p.m. The bank doors closing, my account locked forever. My chest tightened, breath shallow. I whispered to myself, this is proof. The words barely filled the empty room. Proof, yes, but would they believe me? Or would they see only an old man clinging to scraps of paper? I pulled an old checkbook from the drawer. My handwriting lay there, curved, graceful. I laid it beside her messy scrawl. The difference screamed at me, but I needed an expert to say it. My hand reached for the phone. The plastic felt cold against my palm. I started to dial the number of a handwriting analyst I had found long ago in the paper. Then I froze. A sudden sound broke the silence. 3 knocks at the door, not like the night before, this time louder, faster. My heart jumped. My hand dropped the phone and it clattered against the floor. The knocks came again, firm, insistent. My breath caught in my throat. Who could it be at this hour? My mind raced. Neighbor, stranger, or Emily herself, ready to strip me further. I approached the door slowly. The floorboards groaned under my weight. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence now. Whoever it was, they waited, without speaking. My palms grew damp. I unlocked the door. The hinges creaked. Standing there was not Emily, not a stranger, but Mrs. Jenkins, my neighbor. She held a crumpled envelope in her hand, her face drawn. "This was in your mailbox by mistake," she said, her voice low, shaky. She pressed the envelope into my palm. It smelled faintly of smoke, as if it had been near a fire. I thanked her, but she lingered. Her eyes searched mine, as though she wanted to say more but didn't dare. Finally she turned, her footsteps fading into the night. Back inside, I sat again at the table. The envelope felt heavier than it should. I tore it open with shaking hands. A government seal stared back at me. My chest froze. It was a notice from the IRS. The words were blunt. 401k withdrawals flagged for investigation. I gripped the paper so hard it crinkled. The ink smelled of fresh toner. If I didn't report discrepancies by Monday morning, I could be held liable. Tax fraud, jail. The room spun. My daughter's theft now threatened to stain me as the criminal. I leaned back in the chair. The wood pressed hard into my spine. My head throbbed. She hadn't only taken my savings. She had thrown me into the fire. My future now hung by threads. But the envelope carried something else, a smaller slip of paper folded twice. I opened it, expecting another warning. Instead, I saw a handwritten note. Check the dates. She rushed. Mistakes remain. My pulse quickened. Who wrote this? The IRS wouldn't send a personal note. My eyes darted to the window. Streetlights flickered outside. Someone wanted me to find what Emily had missed. The words gave me both fear and hope. Fear that someone else was watching, hope that the trail was bigger than she realized. Could this be my chance to prove everything? The fridge hummed louder, rattling. I stared at the folder, the IRS notice, the forged slips. All pieces of a puzzle scattered on my table. My chest hurt, but inside a small fire lit again. I whispered aloud, to no one. She won't win. The words tasted bitter, but strong. My decision was clear. I needed to move fast, but not tonight. Not until I was sure. I folded the envelope, tucking it inside the folder. My thumb still stung from the earlier cut. Blood dried into the paper's edge. My mark was now there too. Father and thief, bound by ink. The clock struck midnight. Its chime echoed through the house. I stood, back aching, folder under my arm again. The house smelled of damp wood, of old betrayal. I switched off the lights, but as I climbed the stairs, the phone rang. The shrill sound pierced the dark. My heart jumped. I froze halfway up, staring back into the kitchen. Who would call at this hour? The phone rang again, louder. I stepped down slowly, every creak of the stairs echoing. My hand hovered above the receiver, and then it stopped ringing, leaving a silence even heavier. I lifted the receiver anyway. Static hissed through, and then faintly, A voice whispered, "Don't wait until Friday." The receiver buzzed with silence after the whisper. My hand shook as I placed it back on the cradle. The room felt colder, though no window was open. I stared at the folder on the table. Sleep never came. I sat by the kitchen lamp, its light yellow and tired. Every tick of the clock gnawed at me. My mind replayed that whisper again and again. Don't wait until Friday. At dawn, the sky turned pale gray. I rubbed my eyes, heavy and burning. A knock came at the door, soft at first, then firmer. My chest tightened. 2 knocks in 2 nights, too soon. I shuffled to the door, gripping the frame for balance. My back ached. When I opened it, Mrs. Jenkins stood there again. But this time, her eyes were wide, almost fearful. She clutched another envelope. "This came to me by mistake again," she whispered. Her voice cracked. She pushed the crumpled envelope into my hands. The paper smelled faintly of old tobacco, like it had been sitting in a drawer too long. I tore it open right there on the porch. Inside was another notice, this time sharper, printed in red ink. It was from the IRS again, warning me of possible charges tied to my account. My knees nearly gave way. The words blurred. "If not reported by Monday morning, subject faces liability for tax fraud." My throat closed. Jail at my age. My daughter's theft was no longer just betrayal, it was a noose tightening. Mrs. Jenkins touched my arm. "You okay, Henry?" Her hand was warm, trembling slightly. I wanted to lie, to say yes, but the truth spilled instead. "She's taking everything from me." Her face softened, but she said nothing. She knew who. Everyone in the neighborhood knew Emily, knew her temper, her ambition. She pressed her lips tight, then walked back slowly across the lawn. I closed the door, clutching the notice. My heart pounded so loud it echoed in my ears. 10 days at the bank, Monday with the IRS. Deadlines closing from both ends like jaws of a trap. I sat at the table again, the smell of damp paper filling my nose. I spread the 2 IRS letters beside the forged slips. Proof grew around me like a storm, but still fragile, still doubted. My hand found the old checkbook again. My writing, curved, steady, patient, looked like a stranger compared to Emily's. My proof was here. But would they laugh at me? An old man claiming innocence? I thought of calling Emily right then. The phone sat heavy beside me. My finger hovered over the numbers, but fear froze me. What would she say? Worse, what would she do if she knew I was fighting? Instead, I tucked the papers into the folder. My blood still stained one corner. My mark, unwilling but permanent. Father and daughter tied by ink and betrayal. I pressed my palm against it, steadying myself. A sudden clang echoed outside, the sound of a trash can tipping. My heart leapt. I peered through the curtains. Only shadows stretched across the wet street, but I felt watched, every hair on my neck rising. I turned back to the table. On the IRS notice, one line stood out bold. Any suspicious withdrawal activity must be reported immediately. My chest burned. Should I report her? Should I turn in my own daughter? The decision clawed at me. If I stayed silent, jail might wait. If I spoke, Emily might lose everything, and me, I might lose her forever. My hand gripped the phone, then released it. Decision delayed again. The fridge hummed loudly, almost mocking. I poured a glass of water, but the tap sputtered, coughing air before the stream came. Even the house seemed tired, breaking down like me. I stared at the glass, my reflection shaking. I whispered aloud, "Why, Emily?" My voice cracked. No answer, only the ticking clock and the hum of machines. I thought of her as a child again, hair in braids, holding my hand tight. Where had that girl gone? My eyes burned with tears. I blinked them away. Anger rose sharp and hot. She thought I wouldn't fight. She thought age made me powerless. She was wrong. I would prove it somehow. The phone rang suddenly, shrill and sharp. I jumped, spilling the water across the table. It ran over the slips again, soaking edges. I cursed under my breath and grabbed the receiver. Emily's voice cut through. "Dad, don't make this harder. Sign what's left and it's over." Her tone was sweet, practiced, but the words were poison. I gripped the receiver until my knuckles burned. "I won't," I said, my voice shaking but steady enough. There was silence on her end, then a cold laugh. "You'll regret it." And she hung up. The dial tone hummed like a blade. I slammed the phone down. My chest heaved. My anger burned hotter, but fear coiled beneath it. I wiped the wet table with my sleeve, the papers damp, fragile. Evidence slipping away like sand. The room grew still. The clock ticked louder, and then from outside another sound came. A single knock at the door. Slow. Deliberate. Not like before. Not neighbor. Not her. Something else. I froze, folder in hand, heart pounding. Who else could it be? This early. This insistent. My fingers dug into the folder's spine, trembling. The knock came again, echoing through the house. I stepped closer, each foot heavy on the creaking floor. I pressed my ear to the wood. This time, no voice. Only silence. And then the sharp scratch of metal against the lock. The metal scratched once, twice. My heart seized. I gripped the knob with sweaty hands. For a moment, I thought the lock would turn on its own. Then silence. Only the wind pressed against the door. I waited, barely breathing. My ears rang from the stillness. After a long minute, I pulled the curtain aside. The porch was empty. Just rain dripping from the gutter, tapping on the wooden steps. I locked the door tighter, sliding the chain into place. My pulse still raced. Who had been there? A stranger? A warning? Or someone sent by her? The questions clawed at me, leaving no rest. I staggered back to the table, the IRS notice still open. The bold letters blurred as my eyes burned. Monday morning deadline. The words struck like a gavel. I had less time than I thought. The folder lay beside me, swollen with damp paper. I opened it again, slip smeared, signatures crooked, and the note tucked inside the IRS envelope. Check the dates, she rushed. Mistakes remain. I read it twice. My hands shook. Someone out there knew. Someone was watching her, or me. I touched the paper, and it felt rough, like sand against my fingertips. My chest tightened. Why would a stranger help me? I thought of calling the IRS immediately. The phone sat beside me, black and heavy, its cord coiled like a snake. My finger hovered above the dial, but fear stopped me. Reporting meant exposing Emily. If I spoke her name, she might never forgive me. Worse, she might come after more. My house, my dignity, my freedom. My jaw clenched. I slammed the phone back down, trembling. The radiator hissed suddenly, spitting steam. I jumped, nearly toppling the chair. The sound faded, but my nerves stayed frayed. Even the house seemed restless, echoing my dread. I pressed my palms to my face. I whispered to myself, "You can't wait. You can't." The words sounded hollow. My body felt old, heavy. Yet inside me, a voice still fought, demanding I act before she buried me completely. I reached for the slips again, holding them under the lamp. One date stood out, May the 14th, but I remembered being at the doctor's office that day, waiting hours for an x-ray. I had the receipt somewhere. Hope flared in my chest. A real alibi, a verifiable fact. If I could find that hospital receipt, the dates would clash. Proof she forged it. My breath quickened, my hands trembling with urgency. I tore open drawers, papers scattering. The smell of old ink and dust filled the air. Receipts for groceries, tax forms, letters from years gone, but no hospital slip. The clock ticked louder, cruel. I sank to my knees, papers strewn around me. My joints ached, back screaming, yet I kept digging. Every crumpled page felt like failure. My chest thudded painfully, sweat dripping into my eyes. Then a small folded square, wedged between envelopes. I pulled it out, smoothing it with shaking hands. The doctor's receipt. The date clear, printed bold, May 14th, 2:43 p.m. My heart leapt. I clutched it tight, the paper warm from my palm. Proof, real proof. Relief washed over me, hot tears stinging my cheeks. For a moment, I felt strong again, not broken. I whispered, "Thank you." But the relief cracked fast. Would the bank listen? Would the IRS care? Or would they bury me under her lies anyway? My hope wavered, shrinking back into fear. I pressed the receipt against my chest. The phone rang suddenly. Its shrill tone stabbed the air. I jumped, nearly dropping the receipt. My hand shook as I grabbed the receiver. "Dad," Emily's voice came, sharp, too calm. "I only did it because—" She began, then stopped. A pause stretched, heavy, cruel. My breath caught. "Because what?" I demanded, voice cracking. But the line went dead. Only the dial tone hummed. I slammed the phone down, my hands trembling. Her half-confession echoed in my ears. I only did it because— Because what? Money? Spite? Revenge? The silence left me suffocating. The fridge clattered loudly, then went still. I sat in the chair, clutching both the folder and the hospital receipt. My chest burned. I had something now, but her words poisoned it. The night stretched on, every shadow heavy. I kept replaying her voice, that unfinished sentence. It cut deeper than any lie. She almost gave me the reason, and then she stole it back. The receipt lay on the table, edges curled, smelling faintly of disinfectant. It was my shield, but her words were my chains. I closed my eyes, leaning back, unable to rest. And then the knock came again. 3 times. Sharp, heavy, not neighborly, not soft. My blood froze, my chest stopped. Someone wanted in, and this time they weren't leaving. The knocks echoed through the dark house, louder than the clock. I froze in the chair, clutching the receipt. My breath was shallow, ragged. The papers rustled in my lap as if trembling with me. Another knock, then silence. Whoever it was, they knew I was here. My hands itched to open the door, but fear locked me in place. The smell of old dust and cold air filled the room. I crept to the window, pulling the curtain just enough. Street empty. No car, no figure. Just shadows stretching under the streetlight. My skin prickled. Had I imagined the knocks? My heart said no. I stayed awake until dawn, the folder under my arm. When morning finally broke, I gathered my strength. Today, I needed answers. No more silence, no more waiting. Emily's lies had to be uncovered. I dressed slowly, stiff joints protesting. My reflection in the mirror startled me. Sunken eyes, gray stubble, a face carved by fear. I whispered, "You're still here. You're still fighting." My voice sounded foreign. By mid-morning, I was standing outside Emily's apartment. The door looked innocent, painted blue, with a welcome mat. But I knew behind it lay the truth. My palms were damp as I tried the knob. Unlocked, I pushed it open, every hinge groaning. Inside, the air smelled of perfume and dust. The blinds were half drawn, leaving strips of light across the carpet. My chest tightened as I stepped in. The living room was neat, too neat, not a cushion out of place. A framed photo of Emily and my grandson sat on the shelf. My throat ached, but I forced myself past it. I moved toward the desk in the corner, papers stacked neatly, a lamp standing tall. My fingers trembled as I opened the top drawer. Receipts, bills, scraps of lists. Nothing unusual, not yet. The second drawer was locked. My pulse quickened. I pulled harder until the wood creaked. Finally, the lock gave, snapping weakly. The drawer slid open with a groan. Inside, a small flash drive gleamed. It was labeled in her handwriting, 401k transfers. My stomach dropped. My knees nearly gave out. I picked it up, the plastic warm in my palm, a smoking gun. But what else hid here? Beside it lay a thin notebook, its cover worn. I opened it carefully. Her handwriting sprawled across the first page, quick and sharp. At the top, one line stabbed me. "If Dad talks, I'll take his house too." My breath caught. The notebook smelled faintly of ink and old leather. Each page was filled with scribbles, plans, amounts, accounts. She had written everything down, confident I'd never dare look. My blood turned cold. I sat on the edge of her bed, notebook in hand. Rage swelled inside me, hot and sharp. My daughter, my own daughter, planning not just to steal my savings, but my home, my last place of safety. The decision pressed hard again. I could march straight to the police, file the report, hand over the drive and notebook, but my chest twisted. If I did, I'd destroy her life forever. Could I carry that weight? I set the notebook down, my hand shaking. I remembered her laughter as a child, the way she clinged to me at the fair. Illusion and memory collided. She was that girl once, but no more. The sound of footsteps above jolted me. I froze. My breath stopped. Someone was in the building, the creak of floorboards, slow, deliberate. Was it her? My chest pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. I slipped the flash drive into my pocket, the notebook back in the drawer. I shut it softly, hands slick with sweat. The footsteps stopped. Silence pressed down like a heavy blanket. I tiptoed back toward the door. My shoes scraped the carpet, too loud in the stillness. My hand gripped the knob, twisting slowly. The door opened with a faint squeal. I stepped into the hall, heart racing. But a shadow moved at the far end. Tall, still, watching. I froze, clutching the folder tight. The shadow didn't move closer. It only stood. I forced myself down the stairs, not daring to look back again. The smell of dust and damp wood filled my nose. I burst into the daylight, gasping, the flash drive still in my pocket. Back home, I collapsed into my chair. The folder, the flash drive, the IRS letters, all spread before me. Pieces of a puzzle, proof of betrayal. But still, the question burned. Could I expose my own blood? The clock ticked mercilessly. My chest ached, heavy with indecision. I had enough to bring her down. Yet my heart clung to hope she'd turn back, confess, beg forgiveness. Illusion lingered, cruel and stubborn. I whispered to the empty room, Why are you making me choose? My voice cracked. The fridge hummed in reply, indifferent. I closed my eyes, gripping the drive so tight it hurt. And then the doorbell rang. Sharp, clear, cutting through the silence like a blade. My body stiffened. This time, there was no mistaking it. Someone wanted in. Someone knew what I had found. The doorbell rang again, long and insistent. My hands clenched the arms of the chair. I didn't move. Whoever it was could hear my breathing if they pressed close. The silence between rings was worse than the sound itself. Finally, footsteps retreated. Gravel crunched faintly outside, fading into distance. I sat frozen, listening, waiting for another sound. None came. My body sagged, drained, but my heart kept hammering. I knew I couldn't stall much longer. Morning came, with a pale sun leaking through the blinds. I packed the flash drive, the forged slips, the IRS letters, and the hospital receipt into the folder. My fingers lingered on the cover. It felt heavier than bone. I walked to the lawyer's office downtown. The city air smelled of car exhaust and wet concrete. Horns blared. People rushed past me, faces hard, eyes elsewhere. I felt invisible, clutching my evidence close. Inside the office, the air was cool, dry, smelling faintly of old books and coffee. The receptionist's heels clicked on the tile as she led me in. My chest tightened as I entered his room. The lawyer, Mr. Adams, sat behind a large wooden desk. His hair was silver, his suit neat. He studied me over his glasses. I laid the folder before him, my hand trembling as I pushed it forward. He opened it, flipping through the pages with steady fingers. He paused at the forged slips, comparing signatures. He leaned closer, lips tightening. Then he opened the IRS notices, his brows rising. "You realize," he said, "this is elder fraud, forgery, embezzlement." His words were firm, clipped like hammer strikes. I nodded slowly, shame burning my cheeks. He tapped the flash drive, his eyes sharper now. "Did you look inside this?" he asked. I shook my head. He slid it into his computer, the faint click echoing in the quiet room. His eyes scanned the screen, jaw tightening. Transfers to her account. Large amounts. My breath caught. Proof. Undeniable. He printed a sheet, the machine whirring. The smell of fresh ink filled the air. He handed it to me. "This alone can convict her, but you must act quickly." He leaned back, folding his hands. "If you don't file before Monday at 9 a.m., the statute of limitations on recovery could apply. After that, your chance may be gone." My stomach sank. Another deadline. Monday, 9 a.m. The words burned into my skull. First Friday with the bank, then Monday with the IRS, now Monday morning with the lawyer. My chest tightened as if ropes bound me. I whispered, "And if I wait?" My voice cracked. His reply was blunt. "Then she walks free, and you lose everything." His words cut deep. My throat ached. My eyes stung. I wanted to decide then, slam my fist and say yes. But something inside me froze. That small, stubborn hope that she might confess, hope that I wouldn't need to bury my daughter, kept me silent. Adams leaned forward. "Think carefully, Mr. Harris. This isn't just money. It's your future and your name." He closed the folder with a thud. The sound echoed in my chest like a warning. I nodded faintly, my decision once again postponed. My body ached with the weight of it. I rose slowly, folder clutched under my arm. The office smelled sharper now, like ink and sweat. As I turned to leave, the door opened. My steps halted. My blood froze. Emily walked in, her heels clicking softly. She stopped dead when she saw me, her smile tight, practiced. "Dad," she said, voice sweet but sharp beneath. Her eyes flicked to the folder in my arms. My chest burned, every breath heavy. Adams looked between us, frowning. "I didn't expect you both." Her eyes narrowed. "Both?" she repeated, her tone icy. I stood rigid, folder pressed close. She knew. She must have known why I was here. Her smirk returned, faint but cruel. "I guess we'll settle this properly," she whispered. My stomach churned. She turned to Adams, all charm. "I need to discuss a matter concerning family finances." Her words dripped poison. I stepped back, heart pounding. The smell of her perfume filled the air, cloying, suffocating. My grip tightened on the folder until the cardboard creaked. My knees threatened to give out beneath me. Adams cleared his throat, perhaps one at a time. But Emily's eyes locked on mine. The challenge was there, silent, but sharp. She wanted me to fold, to leave, to surrender. I forced myself to stand tall, though my back screamed. My jaw clenched. For a moment, The office fell silent. The hum of the printer, the only sound. My chest heaved, hot with anger. I turned, walking slowly past her. Her perfume trailed, stabbing my nose. She leaned closer as I passed, whispering, "It's already too late." Her words clung to me like a curse. I stepped out into the hall, the door clicking shut behind me. My legs shook, my breath ragged. The folder felt heavier than ever. My heart thudded with rage and fear. Outside, the city noise swallowed me, cars honked, people rushed, but her words echoed louder than all of it. "It's already too late." I gripped the folder tighter, sweat dripping down my spine, and as I reached the corner, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, screen glowing. A new message from her. Just 2 words. "Tomorrow morning." The message glowed on the screen. Tomorrow morning. My throat tightened. Tomorrow, before the lawyer's deadline, before the IRS cutoff. She was moving first. I shoved the phone back into my pocket, heart hammering. Sleep was impossible that night. I sat at the kitchen table, folder open, papers spread. The hospital receipt, the forged slips, the IRS notices, the flash drive printout. Proof, all of it proof. Yet my hand shook. The smell of stale coffee lingered from the pot I had forgotten to clean. I sipped cold water, each swallow heavy. My chest ached with the weight of choice. If tomorrow she spoke first, she'd twist it all. At dawn, a letter arrived. Official seal, crisp envelope. My hands trembled, tearing it open. Arbitration hearing scheduled, 10 a.m. My heart pounded. It was here. No more time to stall. Tomorrow was today. I dressed in my best suit, the one I hadn't worn in years. The fabric smelled faintly of mothballs. My tie shook in my fingers as I knotted it. In the mirror, I barely recognized the man staring back. The courthouse loomed gray against the morning sky. The air smelled of rain on stone. People rushed past, voices echoing off the steps. I clutched the folder like a lifeline, my hands slick with sweat. Inside, the hall was cold, lined with benches. Emily was already there. She wore a bright dress, smiling sweetly at the clerk. Her eyes met mine for a second, mocking, sharp. My knees weakened. We were called into the small hearing room. The arbitrator sat at the head of the table, glasses low on his nose, papers stacked neatly before him. His voice was steady, almost gentle. "Let's begin." Emily spoke first, smooth and practiced. "My father made the withdrawals himself. He's forgetful, confused. I tried to help, but he insists on blaming me." Her words were daggers wrapped in silk. I slammed the folder on the table. Papers spilled out, sliding across the wood. "That's a lie," I said, my voice breaking but loud enough to echo. The room went still. I showed the forged slips, the shaky signatures, the dates that clashed with my hospital visit. The arbitrator leaned closer, frowning. "Interesting," he murmured. Emily's smile faltered, but only for a second. Then I pulled out the IRS notices. The red ink glared under the light. The arbitrator's brows rose higher. "This complicates matters," he said softly. Emily shifted in her seat, fingers drumming on the table. Finally, I slid the flash drive printout forward. Transfers, account numbers, her name tied directly to mine. My breath caught. The room fell silent. She glanced at it, then laughed. Anyone could have done that. My chest collapsed, proof, and still she twisted it. I wanted to shout, to slam the desk. Then the arbitrator raised a hand. "Do you have anything else?" His tone suggested he wasn't convinced. I hesitated, then remembered. My phone. I pulled it out, scrolling through old messages, and there it was, her voicemail. I pressed play. Her voice filled the room. I drained it. "He'll never fight back." Gasps rippled across the small crowd of clerks and witnesses. Emily's face blanched, then hardened. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The recording ended with her laugh, cruel and sharp. The arbitrator leaned back, folding his hands. His eyes stayed on her. Silence stretched, heavy and final. My heart thudded in my chest. I gripped the folder so tight it bent under my fingers. Emily finally spat. That was taken out of context, but her voice cracked. Her hands fidgeted. Her charm faltered. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. The arbitrator cleared his throat. "This will require review. Final ruling will be delivered tomorrow morning." His words landed like a gavel. Tomorrow again. Another day of waiting. My chest sank. Relief mixed with dread. I had shown everything, bared it all. But justice still hung one step away. I couldn't rest, not yet. My body trembled with exhaustion. Emily leaned close as we left the room. Her perfume stung my nose. She whispered, "Tomorrow, Dad." Tomorrow, I'll make sure they see who you really are. My stomach turned. Outside, the sky had darkened, clouds heavy with rain. Thunder rumbled in the distance. I clutched the folder under my arm, pulling my coat tighter. The courthouse steps felt heavier than stone. I walked slowly home, the wind biting, rain beginning to fall. Each drop stung against my face. Tomorrow, always tomorrow. The word echoed in my skull, ringing with both hope and dread. At my door, I paused. The porch light flickered, buzzing. I unlocked the door with shaky hands, stepping inside. The house smelled of old paper and rain. My chest heaved. I set the folder on the table. My fingers lingered on it, trembling. Tomorrow would decide everything. My future, my name, my daughter. And then the phone rang, loud, urgent. I grabbed it, breathless. A voice on the line whispered, "Be ready at 8. She's not coming alone." The voice cut off before I could answer. The line went dead, leaving only the hum of silence. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles burned. My chest tightened. Tomorrow morning was no longer just a deadline, it was a battlefield. I set the receiver down, hands trembling. The house felt colder than ever, shadows stretching long across the floor. I pressed both palms to the table, staring at the folder. Inside lay every shred of truth I had left. The night dragged on without mercy. I couldn't sleep. I sat by the lamp, listening to the fridge hum, to the clock tick, to the wind rattle the shutters. Every sound felt sharper, closer. Fear refused to leave me. But morning came, pale light through thin curtains. I rose, slow and stiff, dressing again in my old suit. The fabric smelled faintly of mothballs, stale and dry. My tie slipped twice before I knotted it right. I tucked the folder under my arm and stepped outside. The air was damp, heavy with rain. My shoes splashed in shallow puddles as I walked toward the courthouse. Each step echoed louder than the last. The building loomed gray against the stormy sky. People hurried past me, umbrellas snapping in the wind. Inside, the hall smelled of wet coats and paper. My breath fogged as I stood waiting. Emily arrived minutes later. She was radiant, as if nothing weighed on her. Perfume clung to her, sweet and suffocating. She flashed a smile at the clerk, then turned to me, her eyes cold. We were led into the hearing room again. The arbitrator sat stiff at the table, paper stacked neatly before him. He glanced at both of us, his eyes unreadable. My pulse pounded in my ears. He cleared his throat. "Yesterday I heard both sides. Today I deliver the ruling." His voice was calm, steady. My stomach twisted into knots. My hand tightened around the folder resting in my lap. Emily leaned back in her chair, legs crossed, smirk faint on her lips. She looked as if she already knew the verdict. My chest ached watching her sit there, my own daughter turned stranger. The arbitrator lifted a sheet of paper. "The evidence shows signatures inconsistent with Mr. Harris's handwriting." He paused. "Additionally, recorded messages directly implicate Ms. Harris." Gasps rippled through the room. Emily's smirk wavered. He continued, voice firm now. "The court finds Ms. Harris guilty of fraud. All funds must be returned. The 401k reinstated in full to Mr. Harris." The words landed like thunder. My eyes stung with tears. Emily shot up from her chair. "This isn't over." Her voice cracked. She grabbed her bag, storming out, perfume trailing like smoke. The door slammed behind her, rattling the walls. My chest ached, heavy and hollow. The arbitrator slid the ruling across the table. The paper smelled of fresh ink, sharp and final. "Justice is served," he said quietly. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat too tight with tears. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, pale but steady. I stood on the courthouse steps, folder under my arm, shoulders lighter. For the first time in weeks, I breathed deeply, yet my heart ached. The money returned, the name cleared, but my daughter gone. Justice gave me back my future, but not my family. The loss weighed heavier than the theft ever had. I walked home slowly, each step echoing on the wet pavement. Neighbors watched from porches, whispers carried on the wind. Some nodded, some looked away. All knew the story was no longer private. At home, I set the ruling on the table. The words stared back at me. Fraud confirmed. Assets restored. I touched the paper with trembling fingers. Victory tasted bitter. My hand shook as I poured a glass of water. The house smelled faintly of lemon polish again from when I tried to clean the night before. I sat in silence, sipping slowly, staring at the empty chair across the table. Her chair. The phone rang once more. I flinched, breath caught. I answered, heart racing. Only silence on the other end. Then a faint click as the line disconnected. My hand shook as I set it down. I leaned back, closing my eyes. Relief and grief tangled inside me, twisting tight. I wanted to believe this was over, but the silence after that call told me otherwise. He wasn't done with me. The clock ticked on, steady, merciless. My life was mine again. My savings restored. My dignity returned. But my daughter's shadow would linger. Betrayal leaves stains no verdict can wash away. I whispered into the empty room, voice cracking. What would you have done in my place? The words echoed, swallowed by the silence. My hands rested on the folder, my future heavy but intact. And then I lifted my head, forcing a breath. I would survive. I had survived, but I wanted to know, what would you have chosen if it was your own child across that table?